The tires. Good morning, everybody. Rooster in the background. Dr. CashMoney with the Channel 3 podcast. Also have Rufus co-hosting with me today, and a couple other guests that may or may not pop in.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Rufus Shinra here. Glad to be on your podcast, Dr. CashMoney.
I'm glad to.
Hey, what's up?
Today, you're meeting and working alongside other YouTubers.
All right, so the rooster is not on my side, just to let you know.
Is that Matt? You got a in the background? I'm going to mute Matt for a little bit. He can unmute himself once he no problem. What we want to talk about is the Affinity Keeps and how players can beginner with them. The Affinity Keeps kind of start the basic outline for how you will face most intermediate dungeon preparation.
Mm-hmm. So one thing about the Affinity Keeps is that for very early game players, as many of you might know, they are open all throughout the week, all of the keeps. So there's the Arcane Keep, the Spirit Keep, etc. So each one allows the players to farm potions for the Ascension. So the thing is, when you're starting out, you don't pay much attention to that. You say, okay, these are keeps I can do and try and see how far I can go in them. But soon enough, these keeps will start being locked and only be open one day at a time, or one keep at a time throughout the week, except for the Arcane Keep, which is always available. So it's not a bad idea to try and push your account when you're starting out to the level that will allow you to at least start farming the early levels of each keep and invest some energy in those. Because if you can get that head start, you will be able to ascend more champions and then progress a little bit faster. This is one thing. What do you think?
Yeah, it's pretty. When you start the game, raid does something really kind of weird right off the bat. They give you access to all the keeps when you very first start. So as you start out, like you said, if you begin facing some of those keeps early on, beginning to develop your own strategy, and push on preparing for later down the road, which is also very, very important.
Exactly, because you never know which type of champions you will be receiving from shards, or getting random champions from your mystic shards or from your ancient shards, and you might find yourself lacking potions to ascend them. Mainly, when you're starting out, you don't want to ascend all of your champions all the way. Well, your starter, that's one. Let's say it's a no-brainer. You need to try and max your starter as soon as you can. And we can maybe discuss the different starters and say which ones are better for each keep. But besides the starter, you generally just want to ascend the other champions when you're starting out just enough, maybe 3 stars, to unlock certain skills. And hold on the max ascension to see whether or not you will be using those champions in the long term. And to send them to 3 stars, you don't really need a huge amount of potions. Just farming the first 5, maybe 6 levels of each keep could be enough. So, can we?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. If you had something else to add.
No, not at all.
So, one of the generous things, I guess, about the Arcane Keep that it doesn't have an affinity bias like the other keeps do. every one of the keeps has their respectable affinity by consideration for as your teams progress. You will find early on that you can pretty much throw almost any most of these keeps and have a moderate level of success. But as you get further, have to specialize a little bit more in order to deal with it. And like I said, the arcane keep is very generous. What you can throw at it because it doesn't have that affinity bias. The other ones do, except for the void keep. Obviously, both the arcane and the void keep don't. However, so early teams, pretty much almost anything can tackle them.
That's true. So yeah, well, the early levels and the arcane keep, you just need to make sure for the boss that you have at least one champion that can apply buffs, because if the first levels, maybe up to level 7 or 10, could be fairly easily tackled, the boss can do some damage on your champions, especially if they're not leveled up properly. If you're running a team, let's say, of level 30 or level 40 champions, you will start getting hit hard by that boss if you don't have at least a buffer in your team. And that could be any buff. Speed buff, defense buff, any kind of buff will help reduce the damage from the arcane keep boss. So, and for that, there are plenty of champions that can do that. If you don't have any in your roster, you can pull some mystic shards and get some uncommons or rares. So the buffs are fairly common. Of course, you want buffs that are useful. If you don't have any use for critical damage, for example, for not critical damage, critical rate buff up, then you don't want to have a champion with that kind of buff. But the general idea, I guess, is just you want to have your team with strong enough champions, damage dealers, that could get you through the waves, a single target or a DPS champion, and a buffer. So, as you said, it's fairly straightforward, and there's not really any champion requirement as far as skills go for the arcane keep, except for buffs, I would say.
Yeah, and like has like their own kind of unique skill sets to look at. So Sir Galaroth, if you don't know his name, the arcane keep boss, his primary skill, Wind Slash, attacks all enemies. It's going to hit your entire team. And it does 75% more damage. So you want to at least have something on your champions. It could be anything as you go further into the game. Otherwise, he's going to start against a lot of teams, and it might stymie your progress. Of course, like most bosses, he has Almighty Immunity, which makes him immune to a lot of sleep provoke, all the good stuff. And his other ability is Last Stand, which gives him increased defense and increased. It is you want not only somebody that can buff your team, but you want somebody that could be able to debuff him a little bit to make these.
True.
There's even a host of champions that can do that, even on free to play, without going too deep in buying stuff, and find champions that will kind of be a gem mine for dealing with this to start out, addressing further on throughout the keeps.
That's absolutely true, and yeah, that makes me think of another point, because, as you say, the arcane keep is always the starting ground for you to start thinking of strategies against bosses and against keep bosses in general. So one thing is, if you don't have yet a team that can pretty much nuke the hell out of the boss straight away, if you're just still building your team, you want to make sure that the goons, or the ads, as we call them, the 2 additional monsters that are with the boss, are taken out quickly. For one first reason would be that it would be easier to take on the boss himself and avoid getting damage from those. But another reason is that some of the bosses get buffs when they have goons next to them. So it might be a good idea to either have AoE or to be able to take those bosses while you're dishing damage to the main boss.
Mac also has a pretty good thing that he posted in the chat. Whenever you're clearing waves, being mindful, you clear that wave before you go into the boss battle. If you use like a lot of your skills that you'll be dependent on, so a very important note to have there. We're going to start talking about some of the champions you might want to. Some of the champions you might want to keep your eyes on for, developing teams that will allow you to go from into the end of dealing with these keeps. I've kind of compiled like my own list of things. Review over some of them. Of course, some might be harder to get than others because there are a couple of void rares that I've seen on there, but there's other options. There's even commons that you might be surprised would actually be good, even as high into like maybe 10 or 11, 12.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. So maybe we could talk about another keep. That way we'll be focusing on specific champions for a keep. Maybe a common one is the magic keep or the spirit keep. These ones can give some hard time to starting players, especially around level 10 and above.
Let's see. So magic keep is force, if I'm not mistaken. Sometimes I mess up the triangle a little bit in my head.
Yeah.
So as far
that's correct.
That we might want to be looking for on the rare side, War Maiden is one of my picks that I have for budget team to deal with Magic Keep. She has a pretty incredible skill set. It's not bad. Her A2 allows her to get her attack up, but I agree because we have this very strong AoE defense down that will hit all enemies. And when it's fully skilled up, it's a 100% chance. So she's one of the ones that I would like to pick for Magic Keep myself.
That's absolutely true, and she's a good pick for many more reasons because I think she's farmable, if I'm not mistaken, from the campaign. She can drop in. Let me see which stage. I don't remember exactly which stage, but she's definitely farmable. And also, you can use her in Arena all the way up to Gold 4. There are many Gold 4 teams that still use War Maiden. They don't have a big champ like Tyrell. Yeah, it's the Deadlands, so it's stage 7 or 6 or something like that. So yeah, you can definitely farm her there. Well, she won't drop at the same rate for everyone, but that's RNG. But again, she's at least a sure drop in this kind of content. And also, since you can build her also for Arena, you can build her up to level 50, max her, give her some love, and she'll help you not only in the keeps, but also in other areas of the game.
Yeah, like you said, she's farmable in Deadlands. So that's any stage of Deadlands. It doesn't have to be a specific stage, and it can be on any difficulty. And I'm not exactly certain on the relative percentage. I've heard people brief and say that they've spent like a huge amount of energy, and then there's people when they pull one. So it's a little bit random, but it's a rare that you can receive from campaign as a for keeps. And also there's other areas of the game that I'm sure we'll discuss in the future where she shines, or even as Rufus said, like you'll see quite frankly, probably even all the way up into gold, people still using War Maiden just because we're AoE debuff.
And I can confirm that I've seen her in multiple early Gold 4 teams, not of course in high Gold 4 or in Plat. That's that's the Wales territory. But in early Gold 4 all the way through Silver, she's pretty much a staple of many teams. And coming back to the Magic Keep, so one of the big issues there, besides Affinity, is the fact that the boss places a big ass. I'm sorry if I don't know if we're supposed to curse here, but a huge shield on herself, blocking all sorts of damage and frustrating you all the way through. So one strategy to deal with that is to have a champion that has either steal buffs, and that's a pretty hilarious one. When you manage to steal the buff from the boss, you will one of your champions will become pretty much immortal for 3 turns because they will get a huge shield around them. Another strategy is to have block buffs. I don't know if the boss is immune to block buffs. I think they are, but steal buffs I think
Yeah, I'll check real
works
quick.
pretty well. And one champion that does steal buffs is Mystic Hands. This one is fairly known and is a fairly commonly used champion for that keep. Mystic Hand, he's a rare. I don't think he's farmable. You can get him from a mystery shard or from an ancient shard, and his blue affinity too. So he's
Which faction?
that keeps boss.
Faction is
Let me
Mystic Hand.
see. Mystic Hand would be, I think, undead. Let me check. If he's not undead, he's he's. Hold on. Tend to not undead, not Night Revenant. So could be Dark Elves, I think. Yeah, his Dark Elves. Oh, and his Force affinity. So he's strong against that boss's affinity as well. So on his A2, which is on a 3-turn cooldown, he steals 2 random buffs from the target. And one thing about that boss is, along with the ads of the boss, they place more buffs than just shield. So the boss usually has quite a few buffs on it. So by being able to steal 2 random buffs, you can deprive the boss from the shield, pretty much making them vulnerable to your attack and open to your attack, and also get as a bonus an unkillable Mystic Hand for quite a few turns. Because the thing about shield buff is that it's usually based on the HP.
Yeah, the thing about the boss, Princess
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
her various skills, the first one is an all-out AoE attack, 20% chance to decrease. She's good at setting your team back. And as Rufus was talking about at the start of the battle, she has a passive that she puts, as he put it, that's equal to the champion's max HP. So she has 2 health bars at the start, which is a really big. And also, as Rufus pointed out, Mystic Hand is really great because he can steal 2 buffs. So he can hijack her HP bar. And then when she also gets rolling some of her other skills, like Magic Shield, it puts, 50% increased speed and a 60% increased defense buff on her for 3 turns. So Mystic Hand can it's a very good champion pick for dealing with the annoyance of the buffs.
And another less used champion, and is pretty much a meme at this point. First of all, as a disclaimer, I don't recommend maxing out this champion unless you really, really are desperate or have resources to spare. But Deathhound, who is a common champion from the Undead Hordes, I said he's a meme because whenever there is a maintenance or anything from Plarium, he usually is used as an illustration, showing him help the other champions clean up. So Deathhound is a common. He has 2 attacks. The second attack places poison. The first attack ignores shield and ignores block damage, and also can ignore defense if the attack is critical. So for common, that's pretty good as far as a skill set goes.
We might have to pretty hungry to use a Death Hound.
Yeah. Well, I saw yesterday. I was watching a video from Darth Microtransactions. He did it as a joke, pretty much, but he started using Death Hound in Arena Gold 4. He built a super nuking Death Hound who surprisingly was killing off champions left and right, ignoring shield, ignoring everything. Well, he didn't survive long. Anything could kill him. The guy could step on a pebble and die. But as far as damage output, his is pretty incredible for a common.
Really, two more things and just push right through. That's pretty huge, and definitely would help against the Magic Keep. The story about the Gold Arena killing with Death Hound, that I haven't heard that one before. That's hilarious.
It just happened yesterday. I was messing around in Raid and watching some videos, and I saw Darth Microtransactions doing that. So it was pretty hilarious.
Great going on right there. So far, we've identified a couple. Death Hound's kind of like one of one of probably my favorites overall because she was like my first starter is Ath a general rare,
Yeah,
and most of the keeps just because she's a rare that has access to 25% weekend on
true.
decently. So she's one of those things that I would consider building into an affinity farm team.
That's
She doesn't
correct.
have she doesn't have an advantage against like
she used to be a rock star as far as clan boss goes when the game was first launched, because weaken could also impact the damage that poisons did back at the time. So with her 3-hit A1, which could be coupled with Giant Slayer, pretty much everyone was picking her as a starter only for clan boss. But then again, when Weaken was reviewed, she didn't get as much love as she used to. But as you said, she's a great starter for keeps and for dungeons in general, because the Weaken, the AoE, it's not something that any other, specifically the Weaken, not something that any other starter has in their kit. So yeah, she's a pretty good pick. So talking about steal and buffs, there is also another champion from the Undead Hordes. You have Temptress. I don't know if you use her, but she actually has a 30% chance on her A1 to steal a random buff, and that's unbooked, and you can get that chance, I think, up to 40%. Plus, she also has she can place Leech, and Leech will soon be buffed, so that's a good thing on her A2. And on her A3, she places an increased attack and an increased crit rate. And that's all without taking into consideration the fact that she can pair with Seducer for
actually
additional. Mm-hmm.
Seducer's actually one of my picks.
So that couple, the powerful.
Then get a Seducer early on. He's a really strong champion for a lot of these keeps. He just has.
I agree.
It's kind of like the partner thing is just icing on the cake when you consider Temptress and Seducer.
That's true. So he's already strong on his own, and Temptress on her own can do some work in the Magic Key, because she's basically like Mystic Hand, except that her steal buffs is on her A1.
Yeah, that's very. I like to do the partnering and comboing when I can if it gives me an advantage. It's very rare that like it does give. It seems like a pretty solid pickup or a budget builder, free to play, especially for tackling Affinity Keeps. Advantage on a Magic Keep because she's Magic herself, but she doesn't have disadvantage either, so that's definitely not bad.
Yep. So this is the main idea in the Magic Keep. You want to have a champion that has that skill, and maybe if you're starting out and if you don't really know yet all the champions in the game, a quick tip to be able to look for the champion that you want is to go to a yumilove.com website. Well, everyone goes there to check out their champion, to check out their skills, etc. But what not many people do is use the bar on the right hand side, which lets you filter out by skill type. So maybe I don't know if you can put it up so that we can
Ayumi Love is
maybe demonstrate that for.
Yeah, Ayumi Love is a very good resource. Let's see if I can just toggle a specific one up. Share screen. What if I
Yeah, the
just want
reason is because people use it to look up the champion that they pulled, and most people would stop there. They won't go any further. But yeah, that right hand side bar is very useful if you want to look for specific skills or for specific debuffs or buffs that your champion can place. So if you click on any of those buffs or debuffs, maybe you can click on steel buff. I think it's under instant
it is.
down the bar. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, yeah, perfect. So you get the list of all the legendaries, epics,
A
rares,
handful
and
of
even commons and uncommons if there are any.
there's no commons and uncommons of steel buff. It'd be a pretty strong thing to be on that.
Yeah, yeah.
There's not an uncommon that doesn't have it, but pointing out like some of these that just have the rare picks. A lot of these other ones I'm not super familiar with. I've seen Metal Shaper a few times. As long as they won, so that's good. And he would be like a bad pick as well because he gives a lot of team, and then he's also got where he can remove debuffs from an ally.
Yeah, and his A2 is very unique actually. So the value of the shield is proportional to his level. I think he's the only one who has anything proportional to their level in their kit. I didn't try him out myself, but I think that if you take him up to 60, he gets a pretty huge shield buff on himself.
Champions level. Yeah, it would be interesting to see how much that shield actually is. Advantageous is the fact that he is Spirit Affinity, so he would have a little bit of a disadvantage in that.
Yeah, and like all rares, the base stats are fairly low as well.
Mm-hmm. So this definitely.
Yeah, sure. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Some of the other bosses too.
So here, the idea is that when, in general, when you're tackling Affinity Keeps, you just want to make sure you know what the boss does, and you pinpoint their strengths and how to counter them, and then you can go through your roster and check out if you have any champion that can counter that specifically. So for Affinity, for the Spirit, it's mainly steel buffs, and for Spirit Keep, it's the block healing or the healing reduction, 50% or 100%. So Stitched Beast, yeah, true. That's actually he's the cousin of Deathhound. But I think he's Void, isn't he? He might be Void if I remember correctly.
He is Void.
Yeah, he is.
He's got the stronger weekend. The chance is a little bit lower. Gets up to 50%. Queen. But it's not bad skills. Like could be useful.
Fully depletes the target limit. The A3 could be useful, but against Spider.
That's also
or Fire Knight, but who uses this guy in those? I don't know.
Probably not a whole lot of people. I definitely haven't really played with him a whole lot. Some of my other keeps, if you get your hands on them, like Apothecary is almost a no-brainer, just because you're going to need some healing support and just the some don't know about Apothecary even still to this day, but that's definitely one of those champions that can go on several. can do extraordinarily well just because of what he brings to the table.
So Apothecary is definitely a legendary in disguise. This guy's skill set is phenomenal. He's fairly cheap to build. And one thing that many people are hesitant about is taking him to 60 and fully ascending him. Do so. Don't hesitate to take him to 60 and give him his masteries as soon as you can, because even though we're talking about Affinity Keeps, speaking from experience, when I was mid-game and I was just about to, when I just reached Minotaur level 15, I was having trouble clearing that level. And Apothecary was I think my second or my third level 60. I took him out to 60, gave him Giant Slayer, and the guy can solo the boss and his goons by himself. I had discovered that by accident, but he can, in addition to being one of the best supports in the game. He just needs the Giant Slayer.
Yeah,
so
I've been pushing on Minotaur, and like I've had times where like the whole entire team's down, but Apothecary heals the Minotaur by himself. And I'm just like, wow, that's pretty serious. How well that he can just endure and push against a lot of.
Yeah, and as far as building him, you just need to put some HP, not even defense for early game keeps or mid game keeps, just HP and as much speed as you can. You need to focus on speed first. When you give him all your best speed pieces, whatever. No, it doesn't matter really how his other stats are. Well, of course you need to build up his HP, but his base HP is already good. So perfect.
Yeah, his base HP is actually amazing for a rare if you really think about it. He's just has one of those rares that people just hunger and crave after, and some people even chase. Well, 5 or 6, maybe 7 champions: Athel, War Maiden, Apothecary, Seducer, Mystic Hand, Temptress. We've put a few others that have been kind of in the chat here and there, talking about champions that are good for Magic Keep. That I would say like a team that is built around those could probably even push all the way up to 15 and do well. And that's a project that I'll probably take on in the future just to see how it pans out myself.
Yeah, sure. So just in general, because for the other keeps that we didn't touch upon, there is one skill that you want for the spirit keep, which is healing reduction, 50% or 100%. And again, you can go to ayumilove.com and check out the different champions that do that. And basically, yeah. So the general strat is to know your enemies, know your bosses, know exactly what they do and what they are weak to, and try to look out through your roster if you have a champion that can counter that.
We'll be covering some of the other keeps in the future. I thank everybody that's tuned in. If you haven't liked or subscribed or shared any of Rufus's videos, please go over to he deserves. He does put out some high quality content, and he's available on Discord, I know for certain. Is there you kind of haunt more than any others, Rufus?
Come again? I didn't get that the last sentence.
You say that one more time. I think I kind of cut out a little bit.
Sure. No, I said I didn't get the last sentence because it did cut.
Oh, it did cut. Yeah. I was rate that like basically you stay on or more available on for players that might just be, catching this for the first.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So you can get me on my YouTube channel. There's a link to my Discord group. So we're about, I think, 200 to going to 300 people right now. So this is where we discuss the game. We try to help out new players. And the majority of my content for now is centered around account takeovers, but I will be moving on to doing more guides and more specialized content for other areas of the game. So yeah, please make sure to go hit there, and you can join the Discord. There are plenty of other peoples that can help you with the game if you are on any level, from the starter to end game.
Well, it was great having you today. I know we've had a little bit of technical difficulties over the coronavirus causing bandwidth issues globally. And hope to see you in the next cast. And definitely like to do more with you in the future, Rufus. You have a lot of knowledge.
Thank you very much. And for viewers watching this on my channel, make sure to go to Dr. CashMoney's channel. Also, I will link it in the description. Make sure to subscribe. He also puts out regular content, very high quality. And great to be there, man. Looking forward to the next cast.
All right, brother. Everybody else, I hope you all have a great day and a great weekend. And we'll see you in Cash Money Cast.
Thank you.